Welcome dear audience, students and scholars. Here I am Dr. Amjad Ali. In this video we will learn about the policies to promote growth. Dear scholars, so far as we have used the Salo model to uncover the theoretical relationship among the different sources of economic growth, and we have discussed some of the empirical work that describe actual growth experiences, we can now use the theory and evidence to help guide our thinking about economic policy. So let's discuss first evaluating the rate of saving according to the Salo growth model. How much a nation saves and invests is a key determinant of its citizens' standard of living. So let's begin our policy discussion with a natural question, that is the rate of saving in the US economy too low or too high or about right? As we have seen that saving rate determines the steady state levels of capital and output. One particular saving rate produces the golden rule steady state, which maximizes consumption per worker and thus economic well-being. The golden rule provides the benchmark against which we can compare the US economy. Okay, to decide whether the US economy is at, above or below the golden rule steady state, there is need to compare the marginal product of capital net of depreciation, that is MPK minus delta, with the growth rate of output N plus G. Okay, at the golden rule steady state, MPK minus delta is equal to N plus G. If the economy is operating with less capital than in the golden rule steady state, then diminishing marginal product tells that MPK minus delta is greater than N plus G. We know that MPK minus delta represents the marginal product of capital net of depreciation, and this N plus G represents the growth rate of total output. Okay, in this case, increasing the rate of saving will increase capital accumulation and economic growth, and eventually leads to a steady state with a higher consumption. Although consumption will be lower for a part of the transition to the new steady state. Okay, on the other hand, if the economy has more capital than in the golden rule steady state, then MPK minus delta is less than N plus G. Okay, in this case, capital accumulation is excessive. Reducing the rate of saving will lead to a higher consumption both immediately and in the long run. Okay, to make a comparison, an estimate of the growth rate of output N plus G and an estimate of the net marginal product of capital MPK minus delta. Real GDP in the United States grows an average of 3% per year, so N plus G is equal to 0.03. It can estimate the net marginal product of capital from the following three facts. The first, the capital stock is about 2.5 times 1 year's GDP. Second, the depreciation of capital is about 10% of GDP. And third, the capital income is about 30% of GDP. Okay, using the notations of this model, one can write the facts as first, K is equal to 2.5y and delta K is equal to 0.1y, and MPK cross K is equal to 0.3y. Okay, it can solve for the rate of depreciation delta by dividing equation 2, this equation, by this equation 1. So we get delta K divided by K is equal to 0.1y divided by 2.5y, and we get the depreciation rate 0.04. Okay, for the marginal product of capital MPK, by dividing equation 3 by equation 1, we get MPK cross K divided by K is equal to 0.3y divided by 2.5y, and we get marginal product of capital is equal to 0.12. Okay, that's about 4% of capital stock depreciates each year, and the marginal product of capital is about 12% per year. The net marginal product of capital MPK minus delta is about 8% per year. Okay, one can now see that the return to capital MPK minus delta is equal to 8% per year is well in excess of the economy's average growth rate, that is N plus G is equal to 3% per year. This fact, together with our previous analysis, indicates that the capital stock in the US economy is well below the golden rule level. In other words, if the United States saves and invested a higher fraction of its income, it would grow more rapidly and eventually reach a steady state with higher consumption. This conclusion is not unique to the US economy. When calculations similar to those above are done for the other countries, the results are similar. The possibilities of excessive saving and capital accumulation beyond the golden rule is not possible as a matter of theory as well, but it appears not to be a problem that actual economies face. In practice, economists are more concerned with the inefficient saving. It is this kind of calculation that provide the intellectual foundation for this concern. Changing the rate of saving. The preceding calculations show that to move the US economy towards the golden rule steady state, policymakers should increase national saving, but how can they do that? One of the main questions here. In the classical model, as a matter of sheer counting, higher national saving means higher public saving, higher private saving, or some combination of the two. Much of the debate over policies to increase growth centers on which of these options is likely to be most effective. The most direct way in which the government affect national saving is through the public saving. The difference between what the government receives in tax revenue and what it spends. When its spending exceeds its revenue, the government runs a budget deficit, which represents negative public saving, as we have proved that in our classical model. Budget deficit raises interest rate and crowds out investment. The resulting reduction in capital stock is a part of the burden of national debt on future generation. Conversely, if it spent less than its revenue, the government runs a budget surplus, which it can use to retire some of the national debt and stimulate investment. Government also affects national saving by influencing private saving, the saving done by the household and firms. In particular, how much public decide to save depends on incentives they face, and these incentives are altered by a variety of public policies. Many economists argue that high tax rates on capital, including the corporate tax, the federal income tax, the estate tax, and many state income and state taxes discourage private saving by reducing the rate of return that savers earn. On the other hand, tax-exempt retirement accounts are designed to encourage private saving by giving preferential treatment to income saved in these accounts. Some economists have proposed increasing the incentive to save by replacing the current system of income tax with a system of consumption taxes. Many economists show a disagreement over public policies are rooted in different views about how much private saving responds to incentives. For example, suppose that the government were to increase the amount that people can put into tax-exempt retirement accounts. Would people respond to this incentive by saving more, or instead would people merely transfer saving already done in other form into these accounts, reducing tax revenue and thus public saving without any stimulus to private savings? The desirability of the policy depends on the answer of these questions. Unfortunately, despite many research on this issue, no consensus has emerged among the policymakers and economists. Allocating the economy's investment, the Salo model makes the simplifying assumption that there is only one type of capital. In the real world, there are many types of capital. Private businesses invest in traditional types of capital, such as they invest in steel plants and some newer types of capital, such as computers and robots. Government invests in various forms of public capital called the infrastructure, such as roads, bridges, and sewer system. In addition, there is a human capital, the knowledge and skills that workers acquire through education from early childhood programs such as Head Start to on-the-job training for adults in the labor force. Although the capital variable in the Salo model is usually interpreted as including only physical capital, in many ways human capital is analogous to physical capital. Okay, like physical capital, human capital increases our ability to produce goods and services. Raising the level of human capital requires investment in the form of teachers, libraries, and student time. Recent research on economic growth has emphasized that human capital is at least as important as physical capital in explaining international differences in standards of living. Okay, one way of modeling this fact is to give the variable we call capital a broader definition that includes both human and physical capital at the same time. Policymakers trying to stimulate economic growth must confront the issue of what kind of capital the economy needs most. In other words, what kind of capital yield the highest marginal product. To a large extent, policymakers can rely on the marketplace to allocate the pool of saving to alternative types of investment. Those industries with the higher marginal product of capital will naturally be most willing to borrow at market interest rate to finance new investment. Many economists advocate that government should merely create a level playing field for different types of capital. For example, by ensuring that the tax system treats all forms of capital equally, the government can then rely on the market to allocate capital efficiently. Other economists have suggested that the government should actively encourage particular forms of capital. Suppose, for instance, that technological advance occurs as a byproduct of certain economic activities. This would happen if new and improved production process are devised during the process of building capital, and if these ideas become part of society's pool of knowledge. Such a byproduct is called a technological externalities or technological knowledge spillover. Okay, in the presence of such externalities, the social returns to capital exceed the private return, and the benefits of increased capital accumulation to society are greater than the Salo model actually suggests. So, moreover, some type of capital accumulation may yield greater externalities than others. If, for example, installing robots yield greater technological externalities than building a new steel mill, then perhaps the government should use the tax laws to encourage investment in robots. The success of an industrial policy is its sometime called required that the government be able to measure accurately the externalities of different economic activities, so it can give the correct incentive to each activity. Okay, most economists are skeptical about industrial policy for two reasons. First, measuring the externalities from different sectors is virtually impossible if policy is based on poor measurement. Its effects might be close to random and thus worsen than no policy at all. Second, the political process is far from perfect. Once the government gets into the business of reviving specific industries with the subsidies and tax breaks, the rewards are likely to be based on political clout as on the magnitude of externalities. One type of capital that necessarily involves the government is public capital. Local, state and federal governments are always deciding if and when they should borrow to finance new roads, bridges and transit the systems. In 2009, for example, one of the president of US, Barack Obama, first economic proposal was to increase spending on such infrastructure. This policy was motivated by a desire partly to increase short-run aggregate demand and partly to provide public capital and enhance long-term or long-run economic growth. Establishing the right institution. Economists who study international differences in standards of living attributes some of these differences to the inputs of physical and human capital, and some to the productivity with which these inputs are used. One reason nations may have different levels of production efficiency is that they have different institutions guiding the allocation of scarce resources. Creating the right institution is important for ensuring that resources are allocated to their best use. Okay, our nation's legal tradition is an example of such an institution. Some countries such as United States, Australia, India and Singapore are former colonies of the United States or United Kingdom, and therefore have English style common law system. Other nations such as Italy, Spain and most of those in Latin American have legal tradition that evolved from the French or Napoleon codes. Studies have found that legal protections for shareholder and creditors are stronger in English style than French-style legal system. As a result, the English-style countries have better developed capital market. Okay, nations with better developed capital market in turn experience more rapid growth because it is easier for small and startup companies to finance investment projects, leading to a more efficient allocation of the nation's capital. Another important institutional difference across countries is the quality of government itself. Ideally, government should provide a helping hand to the market system by protecting property right, enforcing contracts, promoting competition, prosecuting frauds, and so on. Yet governments sometimes diverge from this ideal and act more like a grabber hand, or we can say that grasping the resources by using the authority of state to enrich a few powerful individuals at expense of the broader community. Empirical studies have shown that extent of corruption in a nation is indeed a significant determinant of economic growth. As we have seen that Adam Smith, the great economist of 18th century, was well aware of the role of institution in economic growth, and he preferred the less role of the government towards the market forces. Okay, encouraging the technological progress. The Salo model shows that the sustained growth in income per worker must come from technological progress. The Salo model, however, takes technological progress as exogenous. It does not explain it. Unfortunately, the determinants of technological progress are not well understood. Despite this limited understanding, many public policies are designed to stimulate technological progress. Most of these policies encourage the private sector to devote resources to technological innovation. For example, the patent system gives a temporary monopoly to investors of new products. The tax code offers tax breaks for firms engaging in research and development, and government agencies such as National Science Foundation directly subsidize basic research in universities. In addition, proponents of industrial policies of such type argue that the government should take a more active role in promoting the specific industry that are key for the rapid technological advance. In recent years, the encouragement of technological progress has taken on an international dimension. Many of the companies that engage in research and advanced technology are located in the United States and other developing countries such as Pakistan, India, China have an incentive to free riders on this research by not strictly enforcing intellectual property rights. That is, Chinese companies often use the ideas developed abroad without compensating the patent holder. The United States sometimes objected to this practice, and China has promised to step up enforcement. If intellectual property rights were better enforced around the world, firms would have more incentive to engage research, and this would promote worldwide technological progress. So this is all about policies to promote economic growth. So see you with another video. Ciao.